5 mistakes that cost me $400,000 from my 4th real estate property purchase, and I'm going to show you exactly how to avoid them when you're purchasing your next real estate deal. Now, let's take it back a step. Unfortunately, I was on my 4th purchase and I still made these mistakes, even though at this point, I had 15 individual properties from blocks of units underneath my belt. The reality is, right now, I'm now at 50 properties and I'm on the journey to 100 properties. But even then, I still made these simple mistakes that were completely avoidable. And the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter how much investment experience that you may have, you can still make these mistakes very easily because often you can't see them. So guys, take note, because number one, we're on that journey to 100 properties, so you'll see all the downsides that are still yet to come. But number two, you can use these simple 5 mistakes when you're purchasing your next real estate investments, so you can ensure that you get the best deal possible and you don't lose that $400,000. That's the reality. Now, for me, a lot of the time on this channel here, I want to show you what not to do from my mistakes, because in the real estate industry, everyone always shows you how much money they've made, or how great it was, or how easy it was, or how many roses and how many balloons and how many celebrations they've had, but no one takes you through the core issues and how to overcome them. So at the end of this video, I'll also show you and tell you a very important secret, because the insurance company at the time that I had this real estate investment with still has not paid me to date. And that's where the $400,000 losses come from, because I've still had to utilize $400,000 of my own money to do majority of the repairs. All the repairs to this date are still not done. And unfortunately, this is still costing me the ramifications from these events that I can still not recover from. So before further ado, let's get to it. I'm going to take you through mistake number 1. All right, so let's get into it. Mistake number 1, I simply didn't walk the property properly. Now, what I did do was I did my numbers. And as you can see here, it was a block of units. The block looked amazing. It was a great block providing fantastic cash flow, and I was buying it off an owner who was managing the block themselves. So the opportunity that I saw at the time was, number 1, I was experienced, and number 2, I knew how to calculate my numbers, because from the previous blocks of units, I'd literally made millions of dollars every single year based on the equity uplift and the improvements I simply made to the blocks. And some of those improvements came from improving the actual dynamics, doing small renovations, improving the leases, improving the income, and also starting businesses inside each of the apartments I bought on short-term rentals or in the NDI space, or which is like a disability space as well, where we could provide people with a fantastic opportunity to stay inside really quality property. Now, at this time, I was so confident in my abilities. I thought I knew it all, and I thought I knew the numbers, and I thought I did all the due diligence, and I even got building reports which outlined all the downsides of the block, but I thought I could fix them. And later, one of the core issues, which I'll bring up later, was not doing my numbers right on the improvements that you should be making. But before we get there, I simply did not walk the property well enough. What I did do was a quick skim through of the properties that I could see at the time. What I should have done is I should have actually gone into every single property, looked at every single bedroom, looked at the outside of the property, looked at the back of the property, looked at the surroundings of the property, looked at what type of waterways they are, looked at the flooding zones, looked at the front where water can accumulate, what type of tenants are in there, look at the conditions of each of the units, look at the upstairs, look at the roof. I did none of that. All I simply did was I went into the property, I got the building report, which outlined that there were issues that I was confident based on the cash flow it provided. I went into the units that were available, I did a quick skim, and I just talked to the agent at the time. I did my numbers on surrounding rentals, but what I wasn't sure of was every single unit and every single bedroom. And this is the downside of when you start to scale or become confident, or you start to make money in property, you start to get ahead of yourself. So simply walk the property correctly. If you can't get access, be persistent. You are making a massive decision in your life, and a lot of the time you need that due diligence. And this should build one of your core strategies, is to know the insides and outs and how to do your full due diligence, from the reports to the visual inspections to the surroundings of the property, the environmental factors, the roof, the inside, the backside, the whole lot. You want to explore it inside and out before you move on to the next step. Mistake number 2, I ignored bad tenants. Now, a lot of the time, property investors will look past bad tenants because number 1, they may feel sorry for them. Number 2, they think that their agent can handle them. Or number 3, if you're like me, you think you can handle them. But in this situation, the tenants itself degraded the property so much that it was very hard to pull it back. Now, you'll see photos here and evidence that tenants were putting holes in walls. They were breaking balconies when they had a rage moment. And unfortunately, they were even breaking windows and not treating the locks correctly, which caused a lot of repairs that I never expected. And a lot of the time, insurance companies do not cover tenant damage to this extent, especially if they feel like it's not in their policy or it was controllable, or they try and get you to prove before and after photos. And sometimes in situations like this, you're trying to deal with the tenant, you're trying to deal with the insurance company, but also you now have a loss of rent where you start to bleed dry very quickly. And even worse, in situations like this, if the tenant damages the property so much, you can't get it back on the market because who wants to rent there? Now, God forbid, if you had a block of units or multiple streams of income from a property and the front of the property was a tenant or was an absolute ass, unfortunately, what would happen in this situation is anyone that's trying to look at any of the other tenancies in that property would see this first property and go, what type of condition is this property in? Now, I'll take you through a core example of this one mistake. We had a tenant that damaged the whole balcony. And a balcony fix from an infrastructure perspective is extremely expensive. It cost me over $35 or more, I didn't even know the full quote, $1,000 to be able to fix majority of this balcony, and I still don't think it got fully fixed because the insurance company wouldn't cover it at the time. So what you need to do is ensure that you have quality tenants, and if not, negotiate it into the deal to indicate that you want that tenant gone, or you want a contingency to be able to have leeway for that tenant to leave so that you can replace them very quickly. Mistake number 3, and this is where I lost the $400,000, I underestimated all repairs. Now, in our reports at the time, there was repair issues with the property. And what we didn't take into account is surrounding flood zones or big rain events that could damage the property further. And unfortunately, as soon as I purchased this property in March, we had a major flooding event in April. The flooding event caused so much destruction that I never catered to the repairs of anything like this, unfortunately. And in this situation, it ended up costing me $400,000 of my own money to now fix this property because the insurance company wanted more evidence. They kept putting us on hold. They disputed the claim. They indicated we weren't cooperating, even though we provided absolutely everything. To the point, when something like this happens and damage in a property happens, you need to get dehumidifiers into the property to be able to dry out the walls and ensure mold doesn't grow, and if any wet areas are present, that they don't become damaged further. And unfortunately, even in this situation, the insurance company was slow to the party where we had to implement all of this at our own cost. And a lot of the time, investors are not expecting this. We spent over $30,000 on day 2 after the flooding, which I had to come up with to be able to dry out the property simply to reduce the amount of disruption, the walking floors, the kitchens that were becoming damaged from the rains, the ceilings that were also damaged. It was an absolute disaster. And to this day, the $400,000 I've put into that property for the repairs, I still haven't got back. The insurance company hasn't come to the party. We've had to progress this further through legal channels, and we're still going back and forth. They're still getting engineers even a year and a half later to this property to try and find out what the extent of the damage is. And the reality is I was a well-versed investor at the time where I even got my own building reports which show them comprehensive data on how much humidity is inside the walls, where the water accumulated to, exactly by how many millimeters things had shifted from the water. And still to this day, the insurance company is not coming to the party. At the end of this video, I'm going to disclose the insurance company that I was using at the time, just for everyone's own benefit, just to ensure that they don't fall into this trap, because insurance companies are there for a reason. And when a major event, which has made the news, of flooding actually occurs, they shouldn't try and pull back. They shouldn't try and reduce the claim. They shouldn't try and not pay the claim and indicate you're not cooperating, or more so, come to the party, because situations like this, where people have negative experiences, it should be shared so people don't fall into the same trap. But make sure you are always budgeting more than you need to, and the inverse should be you should budget more and have a lower cost of repairs, so you end up at net positive rather than, like myself, at a net negative in this situation. Mistake number 4, and this is a typical Sanjay move, but I trusted the real estate agent over the data because I was more interested in relationships. Now, at the time, the agent actually, who I got along with really, really well, outlined what the data of the property would be, what the rentals look like, and because we were so close to universities and transport, how attractive this property would be to rent. What I didn't know, it was probably the weakest street in the suburb compared to all the surrounding rental data. The mistake I made here was, even though I knew the overall specific data of the suburb, I didn't know the specific data of that street. And what I should have done is not just gone off the agent, not really focus on the relationships, which is sometimes my weakness. What I should have done is gone off the core specific data inside that street, and more importantly, the core specific data inside that property. And unfortunately, it did cost me between $600 to $800 per week of rental income that I was never able to recover, which had to really force me to innovate to, number one, overcome all these repairs that I had to, make the property to a standard which was better than the previous, hence why I spent the $400,000, and then more importantly, being able to leverage up into better tenants to be able to secure that property and secure the cash flow. But the number one rule, and what you should do, is definitely have a conversation with the tenant, but obtain the right data. And sometimes you need the correct platforms, which we cover in our school community, which is a completely free community. I'll leave the link below. We show you exactly how to uncover that data so you can calculate the cash flow, and more importantly, be in a positive cash flow position so you don't have to contribute anything towards these properties, but more so get paid from the properties at the end of the week. Now, taking this into account, you should always speak to a financial advisor, because this is not financial advice, but the most important thing is you should calculate your mortgage amount or your interest payments, and you always want to be net positive, because if you have a cash flow positive property, this actually improves your serviceability, which will then allow you to leverage into the next property, especially when you improve the property, get those equity gains, and then be able to then roll into the next one with improved serviceability. But please don't make this mistake. And mistake number 5, rookie error. I did not plan the correct exit. I'm going to give you 4 exit strategies which you can plan correctly. Now, the reason why I made this mistake was actually because of my track record. Because I'd invested into so much property by this stage, unfortunately, I did not calculate how, if I got myself into trouble, how I would exit. And the fact of the matter is, I'd never been in a situation like this where I had to dip in $400,000 of my savings to be able to fix the property. The reality is that when so much extensive damage occurs, or you have really poor tenants, or you've gone off really poor data, a lot of the time you can't even rent out that property to be able to recover. And in this situation, that was me. I could not rent out the property because it was so damaged. The damages were so significant that no one would even look at this property. And even if I did rent out that property, it'd be to a really low quality tenant, which would put me in this negative loop. So instead, I should have had a core exit strategy, or even surplus funds set aside, so I could either refi, right, based on the existing tenancies straight away. I could actually understand the cash flow from the very start, hold the cash flow. I could actually look for a flip and move on for high quality forced appreciation. Or the most logical one, I could hold the property and understand my selling position by either making small improvements, improving the actual tenants, or even having a short-term plan to be able to make a large long-term gain. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people don't have an exit strategy, but I recommend having 3 in place when you are purchasing a property, because the reality is that things can go wrong. But if you have the right exit strategy in place, you can actually benefit a long way, not only from plan A, plan B, but even sometimes plan C. So in order for you to never make these mistakes again, it's important that you understand the cost and the price I had to pay from, number one, the experience, but also from my back pocket. And $400,000 is a significant amount of money for anyone. It doesn't matter who you are. And for a lot of people, that could have put them under. Because just remember, I could not sell this property at the time, and I could not even re-rent it. The insurance company, which I'm just about to reveal, also would not come to the party, so it really left me stuck. I placed so many claims forward to say, look, I cannot get out of this situation. I need desperate help, and no one would listen at the time. And it cost me repairers. I used to go on site myself to try and help out. We had family and friends help out because I was in a very desperate situation. And I never want anyone out there to be in this situation. Hence why I'm actually coming on here and also talking about the downsides of property, so we never make it again, and hopefully you don't make this again. Now, moving forward, the insurance company. Now, the insurance company that I had at the time and I was using is called Terry Shear. I'd had over 40 properties with Terry Shear at this stage of when we were still dealing with the claim, and they still wouldn't come to the party. They put investigators on me. I had to have interviews. I had to answer every single question thousands of times. They asked for all my bank statements. They went for criminal checks. They did absolutely everything to try and understand if it was legitimate. And all I kept showing them was not only what they wanted, but also the reports of the rain. And it was one of the largest flooding events in the last 30 years or something like that. So in situations like this, insurance companies usually don't want to pay up, and these guys should be liable for their actions. To date, they still have not covered the claim, and I've had to dip everything out of my pocket, and the property still needs more repairs. And based on the reports, they are still getting engineers on site to this day to try and find issues which could be apparent, to try and find a way to decline the claim. So if you're out there, please take my advice in regards to, from my experiences. I would not recommend Terry Shear for my own personal assets. And if you're out there looking for insurance companies, just keep that in mind. What to do next? When you are looking for your property purchase, just ensure you follow these 5 steps, write them down, and make sure they're covered easily. The next thing is you can also join our free community, which is a school community. And on that community, we share ideas for like-minded people. I've created a free space so we can go back and forth, ping pong, you can see what I'm doing, and more importantly, follow my journey from 50 to 100 properties. It's a really exciting space for me, and I'm putting everything I can into this space so I can learn from others, but not only that, share from my learnings as well. More importantly, property is one of the most fantastic spaces to be able to scale quickly, but to also do it safely and also build long-term wealth. So this channel is made to show you the plus sides, the downsides, and everything in between. And I'm really looking forward to joining you on the next video. If you have any questions, leave them below. Follow me on Instagram, send me a DM, join our school group. Let's get into the community, and hopefully I could also see you in my inner circle. I'll see you then.